So welcome everybody to the last talk of the afternoon session before the break. This talk will be about the magic sauce that has to do with the chaos that we have seen in the previous talk, which is vulnerabilities. We know that on average in 2,000 lines of code, there's between 1 and 100 vulnerabilities. And these vulnerabilities, they are just there and they will never go away. It's not because humans are stupid, but it's because of the complexity of all the ingredients. And this is why it's very important that we talk about vulnerabilities. And we have an expert who can tell how to deal and how to disclose vulnerabilities and the way how it should be done. And this is the moment I would like to ask Ed to come to stage. Ed, thank you for being here. And thanks for giving us a deep dive into the world of vulnerability disclosure.
Thank you. Thank you, Raphael. Yeah, thank you, everyone. So the motto of the conference this year was the human factor. And I just want to start with something I thought was rather fitting, that the organizers decided to invite the one person who uses a frog online as a profile picture. So, of course, this talk is going to be animal-themed and not human-themed. So I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Ed, and I'm a security researcher, bug bounty hunter, pen tester. I've managed programs. I've done quite a lot in the bug bounty space. But one thing I'm definitely not is a professional speaker. So please bear with me. I very rarely get out of my little black dungeon back at home. In fact, when I go on holiday, this is about the best I get in terms of vitamin D. I mean, I look really, really happy right now. And I must say, flew in from the UK here to Switzerland for the first time here. And it's kind of interesting how the UK and Switzerland has a lot more in common than I think people realize. I mean, especially with today, we saw firsthand that we have beautiful weather in both countries. And one thing that the UK really does well is our train system is just about as good as SBB here. And I always tell people in Switzerland, why would you want this if you could have this anytime? But I'm not here to chat about the UK shenanigans. I'm here to talk about coordinated vulnerability disclosure, short form CVD. You'll hear people use expressions such as bug bounty, responsible disclosure, I just got a lawsuit in the mail. They basically all mean the same thing. They mean CVD more or less. For those who don't know what CVD is, let me define it all with an example. You have a bunch of ethical hackers who want to help you, and you've got a company, Company A. This company produces software as their product. And of course, as we all know, that software has security vulnerabilities. So these hackers go and find these vulnerabilities, and they want to let the company know about the vulnerabilities. This whole process, in my opinion, is really an art form. It's best described as almost like a symphony of sorts, where the hackers craft this meticulously beautiful proof of concept. They extend an olive branch to the company, and of course the company, in the most diplomatic and welcoming fashion, takes on the vulnerability and resolves it immediately. No, in reality, it's an absolute shit show, is what coordinated vulnerability disclosure looks like. So we have hackers getting lawsuits, we get companies protecting data breaches behind bug bounty programs, we're getting journalists getting sued for covering previously disclosed vulnerabilities. The thing's chaos, it's utter mess. But amidst that chaos, there are some shining bright lights, some real amazing people in the industry who've made some great contributions. And this talk, I want to highlight their work. People such as Dr. Mita Lazari, who has done an incredible amount of work to change the landscape, especially in the bug bounty industry, with a concept known as legal safe harbors. I'll touch on that later, don't worry. We've got content creators, people such as Live Overflow, Nahum Sec, Insider PhD, and many, many more who are creating content on YouTube, blog posts, things that all of you right now can go consume for free that would help you with understanding ethical hacking, and especially then the reporting process, the coordinated vulnerability disclosure process. We've also got companies and organizations such as the EFF, and in the open source space, we've got the OpenSF. They're providing guidance for anyone who wants to launch bug bounty programs and then CVD programs and stuff like that. So there's a lot more content being produced than ever before. Now, I thought I wanted to start this talk with one of my favorite reports of all time. It was a report actually that was disclosed to me. A few years back, I remember coming back from DEF CON from Vegas summer, and I was recovering from a hangover, as you always do from Vegas. And the report that I received when I first arrived was this. It turned out I didn't realize, but I'd left my laptop unlocked in Vegas, and the HackerOne triage team decided that was their opportunity to get back on me. And so my bug bounty program got this all of a sudden. So amidst the entire chaos, there are some fun things and some beautiful things. But before I delve into how to run this and operate this properly, I want to define some key players in the industry. Like I said, I use animals. I know you're all thinking dolphin right now. I'm thinking bug bounty hunters right now. And there's a reason I use the dolphins as the analogy for my talk. A few years back, I read an interesting article about some zookeepers who were struggling to collect the rubbish after a day's event. And they decided, right, what we're going to do is we're going to train the dolphins by giving them fish to go collect the rubbish at the bottom of the tank and bring it back to us. So, dolphin, you go collect the rubbish, bring it to us, I give you a fish. Meet Kelly. Kelly was a particularly clever dolphin. Kelly realized that one piece of rubbish equates to one fish. But what if I took that rubbish, hid it all the way at the bottom of the tank, and started ripping little pieces of it one by one and bringing the little bits? Don't I start getting more fish for more rubbish? In my opinion, that right there, Kelly, is the definition of a hacker. For the next person, I found a fitting figure. We've got the individual right now that's begging right now. Meet the beg bounty hunter. Cute and fluffy on the outside, but get anywhere near them and they'll teach you a hard lesson. So for the rest of the talk, I'm going to start using animals, as you'll see. They'll start coming into this whole thing. So let's start with the principles. Let's dive into the actual actionable advice that I can give you all if you're considering running a CVD program, or you're a bug bounty hunter or something like that, and you want to encourage companies to adopt certain principles. We need to adopt certain important principles for things to work. The first principle is have a way to be contacted. The entire process of CVD cannot work if you don't at least have one initial point of access for being contacted. And there's a really simple process to achieve this. It's known as Security.txt. So just as a matter of interest here today, how many have actually already heard of Security.txt before? Okay, actually, there are quite a few. I'm actually a bit surprised, because when I rehearsed this talk at home with my family, nobody put their hand up at this stage. So for those who don't know what Security.txt is, it's a text file that we put under the .well-known directory on your website, and it basically allows you to tell the hackers, hey, if you find a security vulnerability on this website, please contact us here. It's really that simple. There isn't much more to it. It's just a text file. So, as a bit of an exercise, I'm going to have you all pull your phones out, your laptop, piece of paper, pen, anything to write with right now. And I'll have you write out contact, mail to, and then your personal email address. If I could have you do that for 30 seconds right now real quick. Piece of paper, anything like that. Just write it out for yourselves. Don't worry, you don't need to share that. It's just for you. Okay, it looks like some of the people who were writing out finished. So, in a matter of more or less 30 seconds, we might have a handful, if not a dozen, new security.txt files like that. It's that simple. That is the idea, the principle behind it. We want to make this as frictionless as possible for the industry to achieve. This is the first point of contact. Now, in case you're still not quite convinced that this works, your government here in Switzerland has started introducing these and has started encouraging adoption of these, and I've seen some fantastic work on this, and I've seen a lot of Swiss firms, notably Swisscom, for instance, who started implementing these. So you're starting to see them here in Switzerland too. That's all good. You've got a point of contact, but you need a bit more than that. So that brings me to the next principle, which is you need to define a process for actually handling the reports that you're receiving. And that in itself could almost be a 40, 50-minute talk, but I'm going to touch on some of the important factors here. So let's use an example. You received this report from Kelly. Kelly's found a cross-site scripting vulnerability on your website. Now, if we follow the industry best practices and what people in the industry are doing, what do we do at this point? That's right, sue them. You receive one of these reports from Klaus, your big bounty hunter. Klaus has illegally hacked your website and is demanding a $100,000 ransom from you. What do we do in this case? That's right. Pay them that $100,000 bounty on our bug bounty program, and then hide the entire data breach behind the bug bounty program, like Uber did in 2017, because naturally that's what you do. But silliness aside, there is actually a process here, and there are lessons to be learned here. One, for instance, is how we respond to these hackers, how we respond to these reports. The process, usually, from my point of view, can be best achieved with templates. So if you're running your program right now, invest some time, some upfront time, into actually writing template response for those common responses, those common things that you have to report to. Those can be for valid reports, those can be for invalid reports. You don't want to be wasting time responding for a brief thank you or something just to acknowledge the receipt of the report. Further, you're going to need to learn to prioritize your vulnerabilities. And the best way to do that, there was a great question this morning during a talk about, hey, I want to put some budget aside for my bug bounty program, but I don't know how much I need to pay for, say, a total number of XSS vulnerabilities on my program and so on. This is where, unfortunately, you're going to have to invest some time into threat modeling. The more time you invest in the threat modeling of your services, the easier this process is going to be. A cross-site scripting vulnerability on company A is not going to be the same impact as a cross-site scripting vulnerability on company B. So the more time you invest in threat modeling, the easier this is going to be. You're going to receive a cross-site scripting vulnerability, you're going to be able to assess the impact, you're going to look at the ability of what it does, and you're going to have template responses ready. There's a bit more to it, but I'm just going, because I've only got 20 minutes, I'm not going to delve too much into this. I'm going to use an example. And this is a report that I submitted a few years back to a company called Keybase. I'm not going to get too much into technical details, but just roughly, Keybase had a security-sensitive piece of functionality that relied on validating the hostname, the website hostname. And they did that using what's known as a regular expression. They were trying to match it. Unfortunately, the real vulnerability, and this is kind of controversial, is they were using JavaScript. The problem here is JavaScript decided that the full stop, which in regular expression means any character, the way to escape that is to use 2 backslashes rather than 1, because naturally every other language does that too, right? So what ended up happening is you could match anything that had Twitter in the name, such as totally not twitter.com. And in the case of Keybase, this was a pretty critical flaw. So just to demonstrate the triage process, the first response was this. Simple, short, straight to the point. In fact, what I loved about this response, because it was an open source project, is they were able to link directly to the pull request. I know not every company will be able to achieve this, but I really, really appreciated this as a hacker. I was able to then go and see the actual patching process that was involved. Once they'd actually fixed the issue, they asked me to confirm whether the issue was fixed, and I was able to just go, yep, as the hacker, yep, that's fixed, that's all good, done. Obviously, there were cycles of work and so on in the background, but for the most part, that's the triage process. There's not much more to it. It's receive the report, acknowledge the report, remediate the issue, have it verified and validated, that's it. So this is why it's really, really key at your company right now that you have this well-defined, written down, and understood by employees. Okay, so you've got a point of contact, you've defined a process for addressing these reports, but that in itself alone isn't going to get you a really successful program. There's a bit more to it. And that brings me to my next principle. Build a strong relationship with your hackers. Now, I'm not saying you should start dating your bug bounty hunters on Tinder or anything silly like that, but we know Kelly. We know Kelly is a top hacker, and Kelly repeatedly submits valid reports to our bug bounty program, to our CVD program. So why not reward Kelly and get to know Kelly, work with Kelly, collaborate with Kelly? I've seen companies go as far as to jump on Zoom calls, meetings and stuff like that to get to know their hackers, and to also encourage the hackers to get involved in the company more. Almost like they feel like they're part of the team. So they'll discuss the patch cycle, they'll discuss exactly what they're doing. And I mean, at the end of the day, Kelly is an expert. Kelly has submitted a valid finding. Kelly can help us address this issue internally. So get to know Kelly. Equally, incredibly important, listen to Kelly. Listen to Kelly's feedback. Kelly might have some input about your program, not just the vulnerability. So I'm not saying, again, you should accept Yelp reviews for your bug bounty program, but I'm saying that if they do have something to say, listen to them, because you can actually implement that in your program really well. I've noticed a lot of programs in the industry tend to just launch their policy, get reports, and that's it. They don't really do much more than that. They're never really building off of that. They're never learning from their mistakes. So this would be something that I'd really, really like to see encouraged in the industry more. Equally, likewise, I've also seen programs give feedback to the hackers themselves. I like this too. Again, we're building a strong relationship. We're creating some rapport. I'm going to want to work with this company again. Okay, so contact point. We've got some sort of process internally. We've built a pretty good relationship with our hackers, but at the end of the day, that still doesn't give them a healthy working environment. We need to do a bit more. That brings me to the final and most important principle at the moment. We need to provide them with legal protection. A quick disclaimer. There are two disclaimers here. First disclaimer, this next slide has the worst acronym in the world. Second disclaimer, I'm not a lawyer. So please, if you're even considering about launching a CVD program at your company nowadays, there is no excuse to go consult your lawyers, your legal experts, to understand what you can do to provide a legal safe harbor for your hackers. Dr. Meet Lazari, I touched on her at the beginning. She really went around the world to encourage companies and all these platforms to implement legal safe harbors. And we're starting to see this almost everywhere. If you have a bug bounty program or a CVD and you don't have this, it gets to the point now where hackers might not even participate in your program. So this is almost as important as the rest of all the three other principles that I talked about. You need to consider the legal avenues. In and of itself, this is not going to solve all our problems. I'm not now safe all of a sudden and everything from every single issue, but it's a starting point and it's a movement in the right direction, in my opinion. Okay, so we've touched on 4 major principles. I know CVD is a huge topic, so that's why I will be welcoming lots of questions from you. And I could go on and on and on about it, but I only have 20 minutes. So if there's one thing that I could encourage you all to take away from this talk, if you haven't already, I know a lot of you already know about it, but I would really appreciate it if I saw more companies in Switzerland adopt the first principle. It's the first pivoting point into a CVD process. Adopt a Security.txt file. And if that hasn't already convinced you, I know one thing about Switzerland, and that's that Swiss people like Swiss-made products. You buy Swiss products, you like Swiss products. So I thought I might do this, and this might finally convince you that you should start adopting Security.txt. And if that finally doesn't convince you, this might actually convince you finally. Security.txt ist eigentlich da in der Schweiz entstanden. Also das ist eigentlich wirklich ein Projekt, wo da in der Schweiz geschrieben worden ist. So it really is a Swiss project. I'm not making this stuff up. The entire RFC was written here in Switzerland. Yeah, thank you for that. So I will open it up to questions about CVD process. I also welcome things from bug bounty hunters, because I know this was more a program-centric thing. And if you want to get in touch, best way is email, because I don't use that Twitter thing, whatever it's called nowadays. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Ed. Didn't know you're so fluent in Swiss German. Very good, very good. So questions to Ed. There we have one. Was this really you, or was this a fake?
No, I had someone in the audience talk that over. Yeah.
Good. When your mouth was moving.
Exactly.
Just well. Good.
So we've set up the TXT. The thing is with that is that we get contacted with random people, and sometimes the stuff that they write in their emails is not trustworthy at all. And how would you suggest differentiating between scams that come through that process and the real stuff?
That's a fantastic question. I was very close to actually giving an entire talk on bug bounty. I just thought it might be too controversial. I might get rejected from this conference. So thank you for this question. That's an excellent question. Naturally, I've been involved in a lot of those processes, and over the years, I've found there are a few things you need to do. Some of these have been covered here. One, We need to make the triaging process as fast as simple as possible, because you're going to get them regardless of what you do, regardless of whether you launch a bug bounty program on a platform, whether you've got a security.txt file, you're going to get spam. You're going to get these scam emails. So that's why I say the triage needs to be with templates. It needs to be fast, blunt. Next, if you have the technical resources to do this, it can be done with email rules. Try to match certain keywords. There are certain keywords they tend to use. I'm sure people who've received these have heard about SPF records, more or less. There are certain patterns to what they report. Try to match those keywords. The platforms do precisely that. That's the service that they provide to you. And then thirdly is the concept of building a relationship. If I receive a report from Tavis Ormandy, it's probably going to be a valid report. So if I know my community and who I'm working with, it's much easier for me to triage. So I can differentiate between a valid report, something like Franz Rosen or Tavis Ormandy, or something from someone I've never seen before, and I can prioritize those two. I could touch on a few more concepts, but I think those three things could already reduce a significant portion of the spam that you receive. That was a great question, by the way. Thank you.
Under the assumption that you have a fairly small base of those who are submitting reports, right?
Of course.
Tavis Ormandy, of course, is a good example because he's well known, but there may be many others that you don't know, right? And depending on volatile this the set is, right, it differs.
Of course, but the idea is that if you are receiving valid reports from people like Kelly, mark Kelly as a known contact. They obviously are valid, a valuable asset to your program.
And invite her for dinner.
Absolutely.
Good. More questions from the audience? Yes. Where? No. We need a microphone because.
Here it comes. Hello. Thanks for the talk. I'm going to piggyback off of that question a little bit and the answer. Does prioritizing people who are well known not disadvantage the people who are trying to break into the space that also might have valid vulnerabilities?
Yeah, I totally get that. At the end of the day, unfortunately, I think the bigger issue for us hackers is if the company is being bombarded with spam reports to the point where they can never get to our valid reports, you're going to end up with the same sort of like queue where it's like bad report, bad report, bad report, good report. We need a prioritization system at the company to even get to that point where we can get faster triage times, in my opinion. Equally, we've tried to be more transparent and open with hackers, but at the end of the day, it's what the platforms are doing now. You get reputation, you build your reputation, and eventually you'll be invited to all these exclusive programs. I don't like that principle, but I still think, like in the sense that, oh, you're top hacker, so you only get access to this private program. That's maybe too far. But an open email inbox where it's just like, okay, that contact we know, so they're just at the top of the queue, so we'll triage that first. Probably a bit more of a softer way to do it, and allows the company not to burn a bunch of cycles trying to chase after the valid reports, personally. But it's a valid point. It's definitely something that needs to be considered, especially with the relationship aspect to hackers.
But in fact, Omer, it was your research saying that reputation doesn't matter, at least not as an incentivization for the hunters, right? That's what you told us this morning.
They don't see it as an award that much. It doesn't motivate them, but in certain contexts, I suppose it's required to get into, for instance, these private programs.
Yeah, I think if you'd taken the sample that you were surveying and you took people who were brand new versus people who weren't, you'd probably see more people interested in reputation in that first bracket, especially on platforms. Non-platform hackers, people hacking on things like Swisscom, self-hosted programs, they're not going to care about that because there are no reputation points. Mm-hmm. So that's my inkling. I don't know for sure.
Good. Thanks. So what I would be interested in is, like, for all of you who are representing organizations, who of you knows that your organization has a security.txt active on the web page? Okay, that sounds quite reasonable. Loris, you can put your hand up. I know that. Okay, very good, very good. So what you estimate on the future, what are the next steps to come in this respect? How early are we seeing broader adoption? How will this scene develop? Would you see more such glitches where people are sued? What's your outlook?
Unfortunately, with everything as it scales, we tend to discover new, bigger problems. I get the sense that there's this big wave that's just happened with all the marketing schemes around bug bounty. So everyone's talking bug bounty, and we're finally settling in where we're like, wait a minute, did we get that right? did we do this correctly? Have we implemented this? We've got people now speaking at conferences, challenging these things and talking about the issues, Katie Missouri's and so on. I think hopefully that's going to steer the discussion more to the legal aspects and the things we need to do. And for the bug bounty hunters in the audience, hopefully get better for them. I would like that personally, obviously.
Totally agree. Okay, last call for questions. Anybody?
And I welcome questions from bug bounty hunters too, by the way. It doesn't have to be bug bounty program specific.
Great. And the questions can be asked in German, I understand.
Sure.
Good. All right. So thanks, Ed, again.